The first thing to remember about number 12 is that these questions that ask you to combine the sentences are actually ideas questions. So we need to think about how the ideas in these two sentences are working together. So we need to know that so that we can predict the question, and that way we know kind of what track our brain needs to be on. But the thing here is, these extra little clauses and all of these other choices, they don't really convey any ideas at all, right? Like, we know that red is a color. We don't really need to get that point across. Like, that's kind of obvious. In addition, isn't really combining anything in any way that wouldn't just be there from the fact that there's two sentences. So in addition is just a very fancy way of saying and. Don't be fooled. We still have two separate ideas. What they're really asking us to do, though, is combine the ideas. Now, choice C might combine them in a way that is really important because we have a slightly different kind of word. Instead of in addition, which kind of just means and, we have in other words, which kind of means like they're explaining something. Usually that's kind of something that we say like is an example maybe, or is maybe a summary, right? It's clarifying what we've said. Now if we look at these two sentences though, there's nothing really that needs to be clarified. The street is a sea of red. In other words, red is the traditional Chinese color of luck and happiness. Well, those aren't in other words. That's a different idea. That's a different thought. So it's not rephrasing the first thing about the street. It's adding something new. So it's not really the correct usage of that transition. And this gets to the other piece, which is after we've thought about the ideas in these combined sentences questions, we can think about style and think about, well, what is the best way to convey these two ideas? And almost always, the shorter the better. So if you don't have a good reason to pick any of these longer choices, for these kinds of questions, go with the shorter ones, because it's probably the case that the longer ones aren't adding anything useful. The important thing to note, though, is that at no point are we really considering the other kind of question, which is grammar. Right? Maybe last but not least, that's what we would consider, but it doesn't matter here, and it almost never matters on these combined sentences questions because they're not testing that. All of these choices are grammatically correct. Yeah, the punctuation might be weird in some of them, but it's correct. You should always assume that all of these choices in the combined sentences questions are grammatically correct, and use your brain to think about other things. The way that they combine the ideas, and then maybe the style, the most efficient way to combine those ideas if you've got multiple options. Grammar is the last thing you should consider. Never say never, it might come in, but if you leave it for last, you're much more likely to get this right because your brain will be on the right track, thinking about the right thing. That's what it means to predict the question. Get your brain on the right track.